You know that feeling when you just disappear into a game for the whole weekend? No stress, no messages, just you and an awesome single-player experience. Yeah, it's the best. So today I've got 15 games that are perfect for that kind of deep dive. Some you've probably heard of, and some underrated gems you might have missed. You're watching Game Pulse. Smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new here, and let's get right into it. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Adventures of good old Indy back when he could still, actually do stuff. Honestly, I didn't believe this game would succeed at all, because movie tie-in games are usually pretty terrible, especially niche ones like this. But Indy totally pulled through, and now it's one of the best adventure games we've had in ages. While Uncharted and Tomb Raider went quiet, these developers decided to give them some real competition. The story starts when this absolutely massive dude breaks into the college where Indiana works, trashes the place, leaves Indy with a few bruises, and disappears into thin air, leaving complete chaos behind. When our archaeologist wakes up, he realizes the giant barely stole anything, except for some cat mummies, and that's where it all begins. The adventure takes you through different regions and several pretty big locations, packed with events, details, and various activities. The story feels just like the classic trilogy at mysteries, charismatic characters, tomb exploration, Indy's humor. The atmosphere will feel familiar to anyone who's watched the classics. The plot here is solid, and everything in the game works to support the story, including the side activities. In short, it's all good. From the spirit of adventure to charismatic characters, it feels like a proper, solid movie from your childhood that you watched and actually lived through. Chants of Sennaar. Here's this really cool puzzle game that makes your brain boil like a kettle. The game came out a while back, and it's not just a quest, it's a real linguistic detective story. You find yourself in this mysterious tower where each floor is inhabited by different peoples speaking their own unique languages. Your job? Decrypt their speech to understand what's happening and how to get out. The gameplay is a mix of puzzles, exploration, and chatting with NPCs. You'll need to analyze symbols, patterns, and even create your own dictionary for translation. You gotta match inscriptions with text, listen to dialogues, and even compare hieroglyph drawings to figure out, where's the verb, where's the name of someplace, and so on. The story honestly isn't as interesting as the actual gameplay process, but it would still be pretty cool to figure out the history of these strange people. I can only point out two noticeable downsides. First, the lack of a proper map, and records of all the dialogues you've heard and inscriptions you've seen. And there was this kind of annoying stealth section at one point, but it was really short, so whatever. Other than that, it's great for the money. Hollow Knight. By the way, you can easily get sucked into Hollow Knight for 150 plus hours, that's not uncommon at all. This is a classic 2D adventure in a huge interconnected world. The gameplay focuses on exploring this world, which is filled with beautiful locations, battles with different enemies, and of course platforming. We need to explore the world of Hallownest, gradually powering up. By powering up here, it's not so much about increasing damage or health, but more about acquiring new abilities. Like in any Metroidvania, many locations have obstacles you can only overcome after getting a specific ability. So you'll have to return to already explored areas to find new secrets or just progress through the story. The story, by the way, is presented kind of like in Souls games, through descriptions of various items. You're in for tons of enemies, that same progression system, pretty dynamic combat, and very cozy visuals that stick in your soul forever. Really cool game, and the sequel should be coming out soon apparently. Really looking forward to it. Resident Evil 7. In my opinion, probably one of the most atmospheric games in the series, and yet for Resident Evil fans, it's a pretty controversial game that not many people accepted back in 2017. The reason is literally right there. It's the first-person view that pissed off many people, even though gameplay-wise it's the most authentic Resident Evil from the 2000s, where there's no more constant focus on non-stop action like in Part 5, and the main emphasis is on story and atmosphere. The latter is absolutely gorgeous and tells, for once, not the story of already overused characters, but a new hero for the series. Ethan, whose wife goes missing. But at one point she gets in touch, and our hero goes to rescue her from the Baker Mansion. What you should know right away, unlike Leon Kennedy or Chris Redfield, Ethan isn't a soldier with amazing training, but just a regular guy who's ready to go through hell for love. And it's perfectly shown here, because the Baker Mansion and the whole family in general is absolute hell that you'll have to go through during the playthrough to find your beloved. At the same time, the family itself isn't just psychos. They're victims of experiments, and their tragedy unfolds through diaries and flashbacks, just like the series. Same with the gameplay. Shootouts and enemy encounters are here, but don't expect tons of action. Ammo is usually scarce, and to progress through the story, you'll also need to solve plenty of puzzles. And Resident Evil 7 is that perfect case of puzzles in games where they don't annoy you. Instead, they're implemented interestingly and, most importantly, logically woven into the game's story, making them quite pleasant to solve. Too bad fans of the series didn't warmly receive this part back then, but personally, I loved it like crazy, so I recommend playing it if you somehow missed it. Trepang 2. This is an ultra-dynamic shooter packed with horror vibes. A cool, energetic shooter like Fear or Doom. Pure drive. Bloody weapons, both ordinary and creepy. Pretty weird enemies. There's a full but small campaign, and the plus is that the game won't get boring. You'll play exactly as long as needed. Story-wise, by the way, we play as a nameless soldier with callsign 106, who uses time slowing and invisibility to mow down enemies left and right. There's weapon customization options, and from the middle of the level you can carry 2 guns at once when dealing with cultists. There are attachments, but not many, though they add variety, and you'll actually need to find them. But there's no main character progression, though. Honestly, it's not really needed here. Story-wise, everything's unclear at first, and honestly, it'll stay somewhat unclear towards the end, too. But you immediately feel some kind of setup and mysteries. By the way, there are side missions that diversify the story, from hacking computers and destroying waves of enemies to searching for intel while destroying some incomprehensible space enemy with rocket launchers. In short, a bright and rare representative of games where you, standing knee-deep in bloody shell casings, look with genuine maniacal smile at all the chaos you've caused and are about to cause even more of. Generally, the next few hours when you launch this game will be absolutely amazing. The first Berserker Khazan. This is a gorgeous action game with stunning semi-anime graphics and brutal, heavy gameplay in the spirit of the Soul series. You take control of a fierce warrior, Berserker Khazan, who was betrayed and left to die in snowy mountains. But Khazan didn't just survive, he's back to take revenge on everyone who betrayed him. Gameplay-wise, it's something between Dark Souls and Sekiro. It's important not just to strike, but to parry, block at the right moment, and carefully watch enemy movements. Every battle is a test of attention, composure, and reaction. At the same time, the game doesn't devolve into dry combat sequences. The story is presented cohesively and consistently, with a well-developed world and dark atmosphere, which is rare for games in this genre. Add cinematic presentation, juicy special effects, and the feeling of real power in every strike. And you get one of the most promising action games. In short, it's a beast, not a game for lovers of peace and quiet. Dredge. Speaking of worries, have you ever worried about anything while fishing? Probably not, but this guy on a boat in this game worries like hell when he's cruising around at night, because night monsters wouldn't mind eating both the guy and the boat along with him. You play as a fisherman, obviously. You have your own small vessel where you peacefully catch fish, travel across the vast ocean, and occasionally go searching for relics in different settlements. Don't fish at night. At night, you might get eaten. And that's it. You don't need to know anything else, because this is one of those games that gives you more pleasure the less you know about it. Highly recommend giving it a try. Prey 2017. The game that many called a sort of Bioshock, but from Arcane Studios, the same ones who gave us the magnificent Dishonored duology. So, like it or not, they definitely know immersive sim gameplay, so let's go in order. The game takes place in 2032, and we control scientist Morgan Yu, could be either male or female, who's on the space station Talos 1. The story starts a bit cliché, waking up in your cabin, but something's wrong. The station's in ruins, the crew is dead, and black alien creatures, what the Typhon, are hunting you. What's worth noting, the plot, though it starts with simple survive, quickly spirals into the question, who are you, really? What experiments was the corporation conducting, and why are the Typhon here? In classic Arcane style, the story won't be served to you on a silver platter. All the lore usually needs to be studied through audio logs, regular notes, and of course dialogues with those who are still alive. Gameplay also follows the main formula from these developers. You're given a location, a specific goal, and tons of options for exactly how to achieve it and which path to take. And there are often several paths, which adds interest and some replayability. But I can't help but praise the station's implementation with gorgeous design. From retro-futuristic offices to zero-gravity sections, it looks stunning. And yes, thankfully the soundtrack is once again by good old Mick Gordon, who once again proved he can write not just wildly dynamic music for Doom or Wolfenstein, but something more industrial with pulsating beats and atmospheric immersion. If you love atmospheric sci-fi thrillers and aren't afraid of paranoia, this game definitely deserves your attention. Hades 2. You definitely won't be able to relax here, because this is a teeth-grinding roguelike with tons of dialogues, a bunch of levels they're still adding to, and excellent graphics. The story continues the first part of the game, and it's immediately unclear what's what. The main character is now Melinoe, Zagreus' sister from the first part, and also Hades' daughter. She's been given an even more important mission: to defeat Kronos, the Titan of Time, who's also her grandfather and Hades' father. The game seemed harder to me than its predecessor, but maybe that's because of the abundance of tools you can arm yourself with later. We still make our way room by room into the depths of hell to beat up Kronos. But specifically in the second part, you can not only go down but also climb up the mountain to Olympus, a completely different path with its own enemies, bosses, and friends, though the developers are still working on it. The combat is slightly different from the first part, but still just as teeth-grinding. Silent Hill 2. How about getting scared out of your mind, feeling helpless, and generally thinking about the meaning of life? For all this, there's Silent Hill 2, or rather its remake from last year. The game is clearly ready to scare you to goosebumps. This game is like a psychotherapist, but instead of a cozy office, you get a foggy town populated by monsters who seem to know more about you than you know about yourself. The gameplay here is slow and tense. You explore dark locations, solve puzzles, and try not to go insane from the atmosphere. Oh, and try not to die too. The graphics are now simply gorgeous. The game is made on Unreal 5 and every frame is a work of art. The developers preserved the spirit of the original, but added new mechanics and improved graphics, obviously. In short, they hit all the marks of a quality masterpiece, so the result is an excellent game. Ultimate General Civil War. A game that tons of players missed back in the day and that practically nobody really talked about, which is a real shame. It came out in mid-2017 and tells us about the period of the American Civil War from 1861 to 65. Gameplay-wise, it's a strategy game, logically. You're in for dramatic and very prolonged battles. You'll personally handle army creation, supply, weapon purchases, and personnel appointment and promotion. Individual battles affect the course of war in terms of recruit numbers, political and economic support, and even the enemy army size in the next battle. About the battles, by the way, that we move linearly through historical battlefields, but there isn't much actual linearity due to many factors. Plus, nothing stops you from replaying history and leading the Confederates to victory, for example, by forcing Lincoln to sign a surrender. Generally, I recommend this to all lovers of good historical games. The Order 1886. You know, sometimes looking at certain old games, you realize how much they were graphically ahead of their time. And The Order 1886 can definitely be called one of those. One of Sony's few exclusives back then that still remains exclusive in 2025. A game you can say has graphics that simply have no expiration date, but we won't focus on pretty visuals today because besides them, the game also has a good story. It tells about the struggle of Knights of the Round Table, where your mission is to protect humanity from half-breeds and werewolves. But everything goes to hell when a rebellion starts in the city and the Order faces betrayal. I'll try not to spoil further, but I'll just note that it's a kind of mix of personal drama and epic conflict with stunning cinematic presentation. This is one of those games where cutscenes flow so smoothly into actual gameplay that sometimes you simply don't notice it. I also can't help but praise the setting and world of the game. It's a steampunk version of the Victorian era where knights fight not only with swords but also futuristic weapons like thermite rifles and electric cannons. And overall it all sounds great, but unfortunately the extremely short game duration and high price tag back then didn't let the project become a hit. Plus those awful black bars that irritate more than they add atmosphere. But personally, I still think the developers definitely deserved a second chance, but alas, no miracle happened. Wolfenstein: The New Order. A game that by brief description might seem like just another shooter from those years that they cranked out one after another with nothing interesting, but that's far from true. Though at first glance it might seem like another alternative version of World War II, and meaningless shooting from point A to point B. Behind all this hides a real gem in terms of story and game, so let's be concise and to the point. Let's start with the story setup. It's an alternative World War II where we play as B.J. Blazkowicz, who in 46 gets seriously wounded, and waking up in the 60s learns that the war was basically lost and Germany won. So the hero's goal is to find rebels, destroy the Nazi machine, and restore hope. However, the story itself isn't just mindlessly killing everyone. It's more about personal drama. During the playthrough, you'll meet many colorful characters you get attached to and who, unfortunately, you'll have to lose on the battlefield. The whole story is an emotional roller coaster, from love with Nurse Anya to meetings with charismatic allies, and the finale makes you think about the price of victory. In short, if you've watched movies by Tarantino, imagine it's all the same here, but you're the main character. At the same time, worth noting, the game fully justifies its genre. It's a first-person shooter, and the gunfights here are beyond praise. Even though the game came out in 2014, it plays quite energetically even in 2025, and the voice acting in the game is simply magnificent, especially the voices of key characters. BJ's voice acting is beyond all praise. Bioshock Infinite. A true legend and hit of 2013 that you shouldn't be ashamed to play in 2025 if you somehow missed it for some incomprehensible reason, or just replay it. The game, by the way, similar to the games above, still looks pretty great after all these years. Not so much technology-wise, but rather thanks to its artistic style, which means the game won't age anytime soon. The story tells you about an ordinary guy, Booker DeWitt, a private detective with a dark past who in 1912 is sent to the floating city of Columbia. The assignment? Bring us the girl and we'll write off your debts. Seems simple enough, right? But the girl, Elizabeth, locked in a tower and possessing strange powers, is far from as simple as she seems. Generally, the whole plot can be described with that phrase. It starts with banal rescue but quickly turns into a whirlwind of betrayals, revolutions, and revelations. Something similar was in the first two parts, where everything also started quite simply, but during the playthrough you had to learn many pitfalls, and here's my personal advice. Don't play the game like a mindless shooter, rushing through it just to finish it faster, because in that case you'll totally miss all the fun. Since the story and lore are presented precisely in moments of exploring locations, various audio logs or environment details that you can easily miss by mindlessly running from one point to another without any sense. And in my opinion, that's a real crime, because the game is insanely beautiful, and you really want to sometimes stop and carefully examine the environment, which will tell you pieces of this world's history. Stoneshard. If you're reasonable and understand that graphics in games isn't the main thing, then you should definitely try Stoneshard. This is a really difficult, thoughtful, turn-based RPG with an open world. Simple graphics, but really powerful gameplay. You're a simple working mercenary who roams around a fragmented kingdom, fulfills contracts, levels up, and kills mobs. The game doesn't hold your hand, and it's really difficult. For example, saves aren't available everywhere, and you can only save in certain places so you can easily die somewhere and lose all your progress. The game has about 200 different abilities and 400 different equipment items, Tons of different factions, a deep health system with bleeding, diseases, bloodletting, and other quirks. But most importantly, all this interweaves with the story convoy, which is also here, so it's definitely worth trying to play. Little Nightmares. For most players who don't play indie games, this might seem like just another dark platformer that's not worth any attention, but that's far from true. I'll say right away, this isn't another game made on someone's knee with tons of jump scares at every step. It's more like a dark and somewhat aesthetically creepy fairy tale. This is a short but unforgettable journey where story and atmosphere hit right in the heart. So let's start with the story, since it's quite a mystery. We play as a little girl in a yellow raincoat who finds herself on a mysterious and creepy underwater complex full of nightmares. If you think about it, the main task is obviously to get out as soon as possible, but in reality it's a real journey through hell, where everything wants to eat you, literally and figuratively. The story is presented without words, through environment and actions. We run from ugly monsters, hide from them, or solve simple but interesting puzzles in their own way. Yes, you can start whining that the gameplay consists of a couple of buttons, but in fact, that's enough here to draw you in and tell an incredibly atmospheric story. Each level is like a chapter of a scary fairy tale, and the finale leaves more questions than answers, just like the game's world. At first glance, as I said above, it's another creepy underwater complex, but in reality, it's not just a ship. It's a metaphor for society devouring the weak. The lore unfolds through details: posters, toys, and cages with other children. Those same monsters are a kind of embodiment of certain sins that reflect human vices: greed, gluttony, and obsession. And the game's visuals are a separate pleasure that captivates with every frame in one location or another, simultaneously creepy and wildly beautiful. And that's far from all the single-player games worth your attention, so if you like this collection, support it with a like, and I'll make a continuation. And you can also suggest your favorite single-player games in the comments. That way you'll help other viewers who've come down to the comments looking for what to play, and help me with selecting new videos. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit those likes, and see you in the next videos.